Chairman Kane's position on border control?
Well, it's really a kind of a multi-step approach. Secure the border first and foremost.
How would you do that?
Well, if you got to put boots on the ground, you put boots on the ground. Secure the border, enforce the laws that are there. I mean, and if the federal government isn't going to do it, I can promise you the Kane administration they will. But if they're not going to do it, then you empower the states to do it. Arizona, Alabama is now doing it. You empower them to enforce the laws that are there, and then you encourage the legal path to citizenship. You know, we have a legal path to citizenship. Our nation was built on immigration, and there's no reason that we shouldn't continue to encourage it, but encourage it the right way, through the front door, not in the back door. So.
Mitt Romney believes in man-made global warming. What's the position of Mr. Kane?
That's one I'm not well versed on. I suspect he would want to see the science, but I can't speak to that one off there.
He should bring that up in one of these debates, because I don't believe many people believe it.
Sure. Go ahead.
I really like Mr. Kane's position on expanding the number of ships that have the capability to shoot down the nuclear missiles, stationing them off the shore of Korea and so forth. I've heard him talk about that a lot, and I think that's a good idea. My question is, given that he's going to do that, and that will bolster our defense, is there any plans on coming up with a 0-100 plan? In other words, 0 American troops stationed in Japan, Germany, South Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, and so forth. It costs us, the ones in Afghanistan cost us $1 million per soldier per year. The total cost of the commitment in Afghanistan is about $80 a month per family to support. So is there a Kane plan to get out of the rest of the world?
Well, I think what he wants to do is meet with his military generals. We do have a foreign policy team. He wants to meet with his generals and find out, what is our mission in Afghanistan. As of right now, I don't know that we've identified that. We're their nation builder. If we can't identify that, and then more importantly, what our path to victory is, I mean, not only the mission, but how do we get there? We can't do those two things. Then it's time to bring our troops home and do it safely. We can't just bring them home and leave them at risk, the ones that are, as we're bringing them home. But certainly that's his approach to foreign policy, is identify the mission and how we get there. If we can't do those things.
What about Japan, Germany, and Korea?
I have not spoken to him about that.
What is his policy on all these illegal aliens that we have in our country right now and the way we're supporting them?
And that, again, I'm not as well versed on his immigration, what to do with the illegal aliens that are already here. There are certainly some in favor of shipping all of them back. That is a real problem that we're going to have to deal with. But I think before you can get to the point of dealing with the illegals that are already here, you've got to secure the border and stop more from coming. Yeah. And then we can sit down and have a constructive decision and discussion about what we're going to do with folks that have already come here, some of whom are very productive members of our society. Well, and that's the discussion that we're going to have, is how do you draw that distinction, and where do you draw those lines?
I don't hear very much at all where anything's coming back to the states. It appears that everything seems to be going more towards let the federal government have control, where it should be coming back to the states and the local places, like this inner city thing we were talking about, giving federal funds. I mean, isn't that something, how can the federal government control something like that unless they hire more places and more people and more things to get more control to be able to go into the separate states and into cities that belong to individual states? I mean, isn't it getting the responsibilities back to the people and where they live.
I'm not
versus-
sure if you're talking about empowerment zones?
Well, I'm
or-
just talking about, I haven't heard anything at all with regards to reducing the size of government. I see it growing more, and I don't see you where.
Well, the plan
Kane-
itself-
What has Kane got in place that's gonna put things back into the control of the states themselves? Kind of like the immigration law, that should be entirely up to the states to be able to do that. I mean, it's enforcing it, and yet everything's getting pushed to the Supreme Court, and, you know, they're the ones that are
Well, he's
ruling.
very much in favor of empowering the states to enforce the immigration laws that are there. 999 is a tax plan.
Right.
It's revenue neutral in and of itself. It's not going to collect any more money tomorrow than the current tax code would today.
I can't agree with that. I'd have to see that penny thing on there, the way it works, and see how. I'd have to see that little penny thing on there to see how it would really work.
The tax-
Illustrated, because it doesn't appear to me.
The tax plan is one step in reducing the size of the federal government. Initially, it's tax neutral, meaning it brings in the same amount of money today that the current tax system is. It has nothing on it, in and of itself, 999 is not a plan to reduce the size of the federal government. But he is committed to doing things like getting rid of the EPA and starting over.
Well, I think it needs to go back to reducing the size of the government. It needs to go back to states.
But 999 is about getting the economy back on track, simplifying the tax code, and increasing production. And then we, at the same time, are attacking the size of the federal government and returning the powers back to the states. But they're not, the tax plan doesn't have to, at the same time, completely reduce the size.
So the only thing the 999 plan is actually collecting taxes in a different way.
Simplifying the tax code.
So it's just collecting the same amount of tax in a different way.
You get people not paying tax at all, they're paying tax on what they consume.
It broadens the base. And one thing that it does do with a 9% sales tax is bring in some money from underground economies that aren't being taxed right now at the federal level.
So for all the people on welfare, how are they going to pay this 9% tax?
Where you're paying it on income.
Okay.
So if they don't have income, they don't pay it on their income, but they will pay it on their consumption, absolutely.
Fair taxes has a rebate, would be paying you.
Well, and I agree with you. The phase 2 is the fair tax and the
You know, another thing is corporations don't pay taxes. Everybody has to understand that. They just collect money and give it to the federal government, and then they raise the price of their product, say it's an automobile, and that way they recover the money they paid to the federal government. So really, they don't pay taxes. So why bother taxing them?
Again, it's just on their profits, their income less deductible.
They just raise the price of their product to get the taxes, the money back. So why bother taxing them? People have to get that through their head. They don't pay taxes.
Obama has been governing basically by executive order.
Everybody agrees?
He doesn't enjoy what the Congress is doing, so he just writes an executive order. What's Mr. Kane going to do about all of those executive orders?
Well, I mean, he can go in with one swoop of the pen and get rid of those executive
That's
orders.
right. Is he
I mean,
going to do it?
Absolutely. It's Congress's job to write the laws. It's the president's job to enforce them. And that's one situation. You know, the president right now not defending laws that are there. The Defense of Marriage Act, the president deciding unilaterally that he's not going to, as the chief executive, defend a law that was rightfully passed by Congress, I think is a travesty.
The Dream Act.
Yeah.
Congress said no to the Dream Act, and he just did it anyway.
And it's, Mr. Kane will get rid of it. So, why don't I do one more and then,
Should he win, do you think he would consider replacing Turbo Geiger with Congressman Ron Paul?
I don't think he's ruling anybody out in his administration. I think we'd be honored, Mr. Kane would be honored to have somebody, you know, as intelligent as Congressman Paul. That, you know, I'm sure they would want to sit down and talk about their policies. to make sure, and their roles to make sure that they coincide. But I don't think Mr. Kane is somebody to rule anybody out, you know, that has our republic at heart. So, I really, I should wrap up. I'm talking now, it seems like forever, and I am hoarse, so I want to thank everybody for having me out. Encourage you to check out Herman Cain, hermancane.com, and I hope to bring him here himself to Indiana. So.
Oh, yeah. Man.